How's it going, everyone? Today I took a film of me working on my 2010 Dodge Charger RT. I changed the rack and pinion on it, and I have some helpful tips and tricks maybe that would help you with yours. So before I go to the garage, I'm going to talk about some important things. First off, make sure you have the right fluid on hand. It's not a very big capacity, so you should not need much fluid, but make sure you determine whether or not you need automatic transmission fluid in my case, or if you need power steering fluid. Also consider changing your tie rod ends, your outer tie rod ends, when you already have it apart anyway. Also, before you put the rack in your car, make sure it's centered. That's very important. Will throw off your alignment and make you not able to turn the same distance as you can the other way. And also make sure that you tie up your steering wheel before you actually decouple the rack and pinion from the input shaft. So without further ado, let's go to the garage. I'm gonna pull the floor jack out, and I've got it on jack stands. It's also not a bad idea to give the car a little bit of a shake. Make sure you're stable before you get underneath it. Okay, so I'm gonna be taking these off, right? So you're gonna make sure you count these turns. That's very important for the tie rods, because that sets your alignment. Which will get you at least able to get to an alignment shot before you can actually set it. You remove this tie rod end, you remove that tie rod end, you remove these two hoses. Mine are not leaking, so I will not be replacing them. And then you're gonna replace this nut, that nut, and then that steering U-joint up there. You're gonna have to decouple with a bolt right there. So to start off, to make this whole process easier, I'm gonna remove the tires to remove the tie rod ends. And it'll come off. If it doesn't, you either did something wrong or you could beat it off. I can verify that this is the proper part, so I will continue with this removal. Now you can take this side here and try to turn it. There we go. So now I have this turned. And now you're going to remove this nut. So I like to pull this off a little bit, and then you can tap that down with a hammer. Tie rod end comes off. All right, so the size ended up being a 21 millimeter, so I'm gonna put it on there. And you can use common hand tools for this, all of this work that I'm doing. If you're taking off your tire, make sure that your car starts on the ground to break torque, and then you can pick the car up and then remove the lug nuts. Put this on here, and it comes off. Good idea is to leave the nut on until you tap it off to protect these threads in case you miss with the hammer. All right, so before removing the tie rod end, it's a good idea to loosen this up. You see it popped off. And yeah, this is not the hammer I'd recommend. That's a carpenter's hammer. You should use a dead blow or a sledgehammer to get it off, but that was the easiest to find. And now that it's cracked loose, pull off this nut. Take it off, and now you're going to count the amount of turns off. "20 turns exactly." So remember that for the future when you go to put these back on. Alright guys, so as I'm driving, I'll explain this. So if you're replacing suspension components and you have to take things apart, every time you take things apart, you damage them. No matter how careful you are or whatever. So the point is, for me, is my rack and pinion assembly should have came with outer tie rod ends. That's what it advertised. But I'm in the moment, I would like to replace it, so I'm going to go pick up outer tie rod ends. You can reuse them, but I would not recommend it. If you're already in there, it's not that expensive to replace them. Try once, fix all your suspension issues at once, and that's what I would do. All right, now I'm gonna pull off these hoses before I do anything next, so this can start draining while I'm doing other things. You can see that that's pretty nice, clean power steering fluid. Some people's are black. If they're black, you should replace it. All right, so it's a good idea to center your steering wheel. You can do this by centering it. Right, then you're going to take the seat belt and this right here locks it into place. So therefore, you can't turn it. All right, so now I'm gonna be removing the input shaft bolt, which ends up being a 13 millimeter. So I'm going to get a swivel to make this easier for me to do. And put this on, and I'm using a 3/8 inch ratchet. All right, after you've worked that bolt loose, which is a clamp, now you can just pull this off. There are these two pieces that hold the steering rack in, and then that'll be it, and it'll come off. You might have to fight with it a little bit, but it should come right off. All right, now I've got the steering rack basically out of there. So it was these two bolts on the end, 18 millimeters. And then now I gotta get a little bit more loose on the steering shaft. And then you could probably hit it with some penetrating spray if that doesn't do the trick. Or there's a lot of solutions if you still cannot get it. On this, the oil filter hit. But if you swing it up and away, you can make it so the bolt can slide out. Or in the future, you can put the bolt in so it slides out that way and not run into that issue in the future. All right, so now that it's basically off, you can give it a couple taps and it should be able to come off. All right, and with some suggestive tapping, it came out. You can see it's slightly rusty. That's why it would have held on there. And yeah, so now we can see they match. And these ones are all old and sloppy and leak. And now time to put the new one in. And we'll do that in the reverse order of how we took it off. All right, so since you saw that the old one fought me, I'm going to use grease on the new input shaft. And this is just going to make it slide in nicer. And this is extreme pressure grease. You can use literally anything. It just has to slide in. It does not need to be grease for driving. It's not meant to move. It's not designed to. So the grease is just going to help me slide it in quicker and easier. And yeah. All right, so now what I would do is I'd grab your long bolts that hold the rack into place and drop them in as you slide this into the input shaft. So, gotta find it for a second. There it is. It's hanging out on top of the cross member. So we're gonna put this up and in, and try not to damage your boots on anything. And as it goes in, right, make sure you're there. And we can take this input shaft, and it should line right up. If it does not, you can move it slightly in each direction. But that was the whole point of straightening out your rack, ensuring your steering wheel is straight, and it should line up. All right, and with the grease, the input shaft just slid right on. And now I gotta drop one more bolt in, and then it's up there, and it's hanging. With things with mechanics, you want to line everything up before you tighten the bolts on. Just need to make sure the rack is in alignment, both these bolts line up, and the input shaft is on, and the wheel's still straight. And it is, right? And another easy way to tell is you can compare it. Since I tied my steering wheel straight, I know, and the bolts are already started, I know that this rack should be centered, right? This bolt hole is only so big on each side. It's not a slot thing, so you can't slide it that way. So therefore, if you look at the control arm, it should go relatively the same length on both control arms, and it does. All right, now I'm going to fully tighten these down, torque them to spec, or get them tight. All right, now my bolts are pretty tight. And now I'm gonna drop the bolt in the input shaft. All right, now get yourself a funnel, get yourself some ATF4 automatic transmission fluid, which goes for your power steering fluid. I still have the hoses off, so that way when I pour this in, it'll flush out the hoses and flush out my system. So while they're off, just pour this in, wait till some comes out, flush it when it looks new. Mine's been new and clean, but it's always a good idea. All right, now that I've flushed these hose, I'm gonna pop off these caps. And be careful to not destroy that. It looks like they might be threaded in there. And they are. So they come off like that. Yeah, and I would leave the caps on until it's in the car. Just pop those off. I'd like to wipe off the surface. Make sure you make a good seal. And then put the lines in. Do not cross thread these. Make sure that I like to push this in and fight the tension. And you're gonna have to wiggle it a little bit. Eventually you can start it and finish it by hand. Yeah, it's very important to not destroy these fittings. If you start it by hand, you can't destroy them, and then tighten it down and it'll be good. These do not need to be as tight, but still get them pretty tight. You can see I'm basically using like 2 fingers right now, just getting that pretty good. It might be easier for you to tighten one on and then tighten the other. Like you see, I am now struggling. All right, that's pretty good and tight. And yeah, now you can put your tie rod ends on, and I got new ones. My kit did not come with them. I would recommend, if you're already going through the trouble of doing this job, but put new tie rod ends on. All right, so as you can see, new one, old one, they're both the same, therefore we can throw it back on. So you can see this is why you replace them. You can see all sorts of cuts, doesn't hold grease, no good. All right, so this one was so stiff I couldn't really move it, so I basically put this nut on, put this wrench, and then you just kind of squeeze and it'll free up. They've been sitting on shelves for a while and are a little bit stiff. So yeah, you basically want to match the angle of what you're trying to put it into, or else it won't fully go in. So there you go. So you see I did that, and then you can just tap it up and it goes all the way in. All right, now once your tie rod's end is back on, you can tighten this guy up against it. This holds it in place. All right, now with the other tie rod end, you do the exact same thing. All right, these are a flexible part. You're going to actually torque these to spec, 26 foot-pounds, only 26 foot-pounds. If you go tighter than that, it's gonna make your steering too tight, and it's not gonna be what you want. So there you go. 26 foot-pounds is torque to, which is the torque that this calls. And then to the other side, and then it's good. All right, now what you want to do is you want to fill the reservoir full of your transmission fluid. And then you're going to turn the wheel with the engine off, so that way your power steering pump does not cavitate, as all those air bubbles are going to be forced out. And you're basically going to cycle it, and then it'll get easy, and then you can start the motor, which will start the power steering pump, and then that will get all the other air out of it. So I'm going to turn the wheel. All right, and every so often, you want to go and make sure that you are not leaking any additional fluid, and the fluid level is going to drop as you get more and more out of there, and you're just going to keep spinning it. And try to not run this dry, so that way you don't put any more air into the system. I'm gonna keep cycling it, and then I'm gonna start the engine, and then get the remaining air out of it.